Chapter 1. The Anonymous Letter. Jack Sullivan's office was perpetually shrouded in a dim light, even during the day. The half-open blinds allowed only slivers of light to pierce through the cigarette smoke he stubbornly lit, despite his doctor's warnings. The leather chair creaked with his every movement, and the wall clock's monotonous ticking was both irritating and oddly comforting. On this otherwise ordinary Friday, something unusual occurred. A soft knock on the door drew his attention. "Come in," he said, without looking up from the newspaper he was reading. The door opened with a creak, revealing a young delivery boy, drenched from the rain. He handed over a letter without saying a word. Jack took the envelope and nodded, dismissing the boy with a gesture. The envelope was plain, with no return address, just his name and address written in a firm hand. He opened the letter with a pocket knife, carefully unfolding the paper inside. The handwritten words were few but laden with mystery. Mr. Sullivan, I need your help. Come to Blackwood Mansion on the next full moon night. Disappearances and inexplicable noises require your attention. I trust only you. Do not bring anyone. Jack frowned. Blackwood Mansion was well known in town, a Gothic structure on the outskirts, always surrounded by rumors and superstitions. He was not a man given to fears or irrational beliefs, but something about that letter unsettled him. The following night arrived, and Jack prepared himself. He donned his dark overcoat, adjusted his hat, and holstered his revolver. He stepped out into the rain that lashed the city, the heavy drops falling as if trying to dissuade him. His old car roared down the deserted road, heading towards the mansion. Blackwood Mansion loomed against the night sky, its silhouette etched by the pale glow of the full moon. Jack exited the car and walked to the rusted iron gates. They opened with a heavy push, revealing a stone path leading to the main entrance. He entered, his steps echoing through the empty hall. The air inside the mansion was dense and cold, filled with an unnatural silence. With a flashlight in hand, he explored the dust-covered and cobweb-laden corridors, each corner whispering tales of a forgotten past. Suddenly, a sound, something moving upstairs. Jack followed the noise, eyes sharp, senses heightened. The master bedroom door was ajar, and he pushed it open slowly. Inside, he found a woman. Her face was partially hidden in the shadows, but her eyes shone with a mix of fear and relief. "You came," she said, her voice trembling. "My name is Sarah Blackwood. I was the one who sent the letter." "Speak, Miss Blackwood," Jack responded, his tone firm. "What is happening here? Ever since I inherited this mansion, strange things have been occurring. People disappear, and I hear noises I can't explain. I am scared, Mr. Sullivan. I need to know what's behind this." Jack nodded, looking around. "I will help you, but I need all the information. Don't hold anything back." Sarah sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "There is much about this house you don't know. My family has secrets. Secrets I didn't know about until recently. But one thing is certain. There is something or someone within these walls that does not want to be discovered." Jack stared at the young heiress. "Then, let's start uncovering these secrets, Miss Blackwood, and we will find out what is really happening in this mansion." With that, the detective and the heiress formed an unexpected alliance. The night was still young, and the secrets of Blackwood Mansion began to emerge from the shadows, ready to be revealed. Chapter 2. The Gloomy Mansion. The night was cold and damp, with a thick fog hanging over the stone path leading to Blackwood Mansion. Jack Sullivan, flashlight in hand, felt each step reverberate through his body like a premonition of something terrible. Sarah Blackwood followed closely, her eyes constantly scanning the darkness, as if expecting something to leap out of the shadows at any moment. "This way," she said, pointing to a long, narrow corridor. The wallpaper, once luxurious, was now faded and torn, giving the place a sense of abandonment and desolation. Ancient portraits hung crookedly on the walls, the eyes of long-dead ancestors seeming to follow their every move. "Do you live here alone?" Jack asked, his voice low but firm as he moved the flashlight from side to side. "Yes," Sarah replied, Since my family passed away, I've been trying to maintain the mansion, but things have gotten worse. I hear footsteps, whispers, and then people started disappearing. How many people have disappeared? Jack inquired, stopping in front of a locked door. 3, Sarah said, her voice almost a whisper. A gardener, a maid, and my cousin, Edward. He was investigating something in the mansion before he disappeared. Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. We need to start from the beginning. Let's search every corner of this house. Where was the last place you saw Edward? Sarah pointed to the second floor. He was in the family study. That's where we keep our records and old documents. They climbed the stairs, each step creaking under their feet. On the second floor, Jack noticed marks on the floor, as if furniture had been recently moved. The corridor led to a large double door. Sarah hesitated for a moment before opening it, revealing a study filled with books and papers scattered everywhere. Jack began searching the shelves and drawers while Sarah watched. What exactly was he looking for? He mentioned something about a secret society, Sarah said, running her fingers over a dusty book. He said he found references in old family letters, but he never showed me anything concrete. As Jack leafed through an old book, something caught his attention. It was a journal dated from the 19th century. He opened it, finding entries that mentioned rituals and secret meetings. One passage stood out, October 13th, 1887. The society met again tonight. The mansion's walls guard our secrets, but I fear that one day someone will discover what we've done. The disappearances cannot be ignored forever. Jack read aloud and Sarah paled. Do you think this has something to do with the recent disappearances? She asked, her voice trembling. It's a possibility, Jack replied, closing the journal. We need to find out more about this society. Someone in the mansion might be following in the footsteps of these old members. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the house. A creak, followed by a dull thud. Jack and Sarah exchanged glances, the tension between them growing. Stay here, Jack ordered, moving toward the sound. He descended the stairs, following the echo that seemed to come from the basement. The basement door was ajar, and Jack pushed it open carefully. The darkness below was almost palpable, and the air was colder. He descended the steps one by one, the flashlight illuminating only a few feet ahead. At the bottom of the basement, something glinted. Jack approached, finding a silver medallion half buried in the dirt. He picked it up, feeling a chill run down his spine. Jack! Sarah's voice echoed from the stairs. What did you find? Jack looked at the medallion, recognizing the symbol engraved on it. It was the same symbol mentioned in the journal. I think we found our first concrete clue, he said, climbing the stairs. But this is just the beginning. We need to find out who's behind this before anyone else disappears. Sarah nodded, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. The mansion still held many secrets, and together, they were determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. The suspects emerge. The following morning dawned with a cloudy sky, a gray blanket that seemed to weigh even heavier on Blackwood Mansion. Jack Sullivan, after a restless night, was seated in the mansion's kitchen, a cup of black coffee in hand. Sarah Blackwood sat beside him, looking even paler in the daylight. We need to talk to some people, Jack said, looking at Sarah. Someone must know more about this secret society and the disappearances. Who do you suggest we interview? Sarah thought for a moment. Well, there are 3 people who might have information. Victor Harper, a businessman interested in buying the mansion. Margot Everett, our closest neighbor who has known our family for decades. And Thomas Reed, the former caretaker who still visits the property from time to time. Let's start with Victor, Jack suggested, standing up. I want to know why he's so interested in this mansion. Victor Harper was a middle-aged man, always impeccably dressed, with an air of arrogance that preceded him. Jack and Sarah found him in his office downtown, a room filled with expensive furniture and modern art. Victor greeted them with a calculated smile. Mr. Sullivan, Miss Blackwood, What an unexpected pleasure, he said, gesturing for them to sit. What can I do for you? We're investigating the events at the mansion, Jack began, straightforwardly. And we want to know why you're so interested in buying it. Victor leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a veiled interest. The mansion is a historic property. With the right restoration, it could be worth a fortune. But it's not just that. There's something fascinating about the mystery and history of Blackwood Mansion. Fascinating enough to make you dig through old documents? Jack asked, watching Victor's reaction. Victor laughed, but there was something cold in his laughter. Ah, I see. You think I have something to do with the disappearances? Not at all, my dear detective. My interest is purely financial. And if there's something more in that mansion, I confess I don't know. Jack leaned back, studying the businessman. We'll see, he said finally, before standing up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Harper. From Victor's office, they went to Margot Everett's house. The elderly neighbor's home was small but well-kept, with a blooming garden in front. Margot was a woman with gray hair and lively eyes, who welcomed them warmly. Oh, Sarah, dear, and who is this gentleman? She asked as she invited them in. This is Jack Sullivan, a detective. He's helping us with the problems at the mansion, Sarah explained. Margot nodded, pouring tea for them. I know strange things have been happening. Blackwood Mansion has always been a place of secrets. Your ancestors were not easy people, Sarah. They were involved with things. What kind of things? Jack asked, intrigued. Rituals, secret meetings. Things decent people don't talk about, Margot replied, her eyes growing distant. I've always thought the house was cursed. Maybe there's something they left behind. Jack thanked Margot for her time, promising to keep in touch. The last person on their list was Thomas Reed, the former caretaker. They found him in a local pub, drinking a dark beer. Thomas, we need to talk about the mansion, Jack said, sitting next to the burly man. Thomas grunted but nodded. I knew this day would come. That house has secrets. I've seen things no one would believe. They held meetings in the basement, things I wasn't supposed to see. But one day they caught me. They said if I talked, my family would pay the price. Who are they? Jack asked, his eyes fixed on Thomas. The inner circle of the Blackwood family, Thomas replied, his voice low and fearful. They were the keepers of the secrets, and I think someone is following in their footsteps. Jack exchanged a look with Sarah, feeling they were getting closer to the truth. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the final picture was still unclear. Armed with these new insights, they returned to the mansion, ready to confront whatever was lurking in the shadows. Chapter 4. The Basement Mystery. Night fell over Blackwood Mansion like a velvet shroud, hiding its secrets in thick shadows. Jack Sullivan and Sarah Blackwood stood in the foyer, ready to explore the basement, which, according to Thomas, held the darkest secrets of the family. Jack held a flashlight and a crowbar, while Sarah, despite her fear, exuded a palpable determination. Ready? Jack asked, giving her a steady look. Sarah nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. Let's uncover what's buried down there. They descended the narrow staircase leading to the basement. The stone walls, damp and cold, made the temperature drop with each step. At the bottom, the darkness was almost complete, broken only by the beam of Jack's flashlight. The dirt floor absorbed their footsteps, creating an almost eerily silent environment. We'll start here, Jack said, moving the flashlight to explore the surroundings. They passed shelves full of old, dusty items. Moldy books, locked wooden boxes, and artifacts whose purpose had long been forgotten. Sarah stopped in front of a wall. There's something here, she said, pointing to a section that seemed slightly different from the rest. Jack examined the wall, noticing scratch marks and a small crack in the stone. A secret passage, he murmured. With effort, he inserted the crowbar into the crack and pushed hard. With a creak, the wall opened, revealing a narrow, dark corridor. They entered cautiously, and the flashlight revealed strange, ancient symbols on the walls. Further ahead, the corridor widened, leading to an underground chamber. The air was even colder here, and the silence was absolute. In the center of the chamber stood a stone altar with several unlit candles around it. "This place is dreadful," Sarah whispered, hugging herself against the cold. "It's a ritual site," Jack observed, examining the symbols on the altar. "These symbols are the same we found in the diary. The secret society met here." Suddenly, something gleamed beside the altar. Jack bent down and found a silver amulet with the same symbol as the medallion he had found earlier. "Another piece of the puzzle," he said, showing Sarah. While Jack investigated the altar, Sarah noticed something strange on the opposite wall. "Jack, look at this," she called. Jack approached, and together they saw a slightly displaced stone panel. Jack pushed the panel, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, they found several old journals and documents, all bearing the secret society's emblem. "These records might contain the answers we're looking for," Jack said, picking up the journals. Suddenly, a sound made them freeze. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Jack turned off the flashlight, pulling Sarah into the shadows. They remained silent, hearts pounding. A figure entered the chamber, holding a lantern. Jack recognized the silhouette immediately. "Victor Harper," he whispered. The businessman looked around, seemingly searching for something. "I need to know where it is," Victor murmured to himself. "The key to all this." Jack stepped out of the shadow, pointing the flashlight at Victor. "What are you looking for, Victor?" Victor turned, surprised and irritated. "Sullivan, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," Jack replied, approaching. "What do you know about this chamber and the rituals?" Victor hesitated, his face a mask of conflict. "If you knew the truth, you'd understand. This mansion holds more than you can imagine, and I won't let you or anyone else interfere with my plans." Before Jack could respond, Victor drew a gun, the tension in the air becoming palpable. "Don't move, Sullivan. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will do what's necessary." Jack slowly raised his hands. "Let's talk, Victor. What's so important that it's worth all this?" Victor glanced at Sarah, his anger mixed with something deeper. "It's about power, Mr. Sullivan. Power that this mansion holds. And I'm about to find it." The sound of distant sirens made Victor look towards the corridor. "You won't understand until it's too late," he said, backing away slowly. "But one thing is certain. I'm not the only one who wants this power." With that, he disappeared down the corridor, leaving Jack and Sarah in the cold, dark chamber. Jack lowered his hands, feeling the urgency of the situation. "We need to get out of here and alert the authorities," Jack said, stowing the journals. "But we also need to find out more about this secret society and what Victor is really after." Sarah nodded, her eyes still wide with fright. "We have to find out before he does something terrible." With one last look at the sinister chamber, they left the basement, aware that the night was far from over and the secrets of Blackwood Mansion were only beginning to be revealed. Chapter 5: The Truth About Sarah. Dawn arrived sluggishly, casting a pale and melancholic light over Blackwood Mansion. Jack and Sarah spent the night reviewing the journals and documents they had found in the secret chamber. Seated in the mansion's library, surrounded by dusty books and the old smell of paper, the yellowed pages revealed shocking secrets about the Blackwood family. "Listen to this," said Jack, reading aloud from one of the oldest diaries. "March 20th, 1890. The Eternal Society met again tonight. The rituals are increasingly dangerous, but the promised power keeps us going. The sacrifice of innocence is the price to pay for forbidden knowledge." Sarah, sitting beside Jack, looked even paler. This is horrible," she said, her voice trembling. "My family did this?" "These are not just stories, Sarah," Jack replied, closing the diary. "There are specific mentions of your ancestors, and it seems Victor is after this promised power." Sarah stood up and began pacing the library, clearly disturbed. "But why? Why does he want this? And why did my family get involved in something so terrible?" Jack watched her for a moment, seeing the internal struggle she faced. "There is one more thing we need to discuss," he said softly. I found some letters among these documents. They are from your mother. Sarah stopped abruptly, her eyes wide. My mother? But she died when I was a child. Jack took a faded envelope and handed it to Sarah. Read it. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the letter and began to read aloud. Underscore, my dear Sarah, underscore, if you are reading this, it means the truth has finally come to light. Our family carries an ancient curse, passed down from generation to generation. Your grandmother was part of the Eternal Society, and to protect you, I hid everything I could. But I knew one day you would have to face this truth. The rituals, the sacrifices, they are real, and the power they seek is dangerous. Please be careful. Trust in your own strength and find a way to end this once and for all. Underscore with eternal love. Underscore mother. Underscore. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she read. I didn't know. I never imagined my family was involved in something so dark. Jack placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Now we know the truth, and we need to figure out how to stop Victor before he does something irreversible. Suddenly, they heard a noise downstairs, rapid footsteps and muffled voices. Jack and Sarah exchanged alarmed glances before silently descending the stairs. In the foyer, they found Margot Everett and Thomas Reed, both looking anxious. Margot, Thomas, what are you doing here? Jack asked, surprised. Margot stepped forward, her expression grave. I heard rumors about Victor. He is desperate and dangerous. We thought you might need help. Thomas nodded, glancing around nervously. We can't let him continue. I know some secrets of the mansion that might be useful. Jack agreed, feeling the situation was about to reach its climax. We need to find out what Victor is planning and stop him. He mentioned something about a key. It must be related to the Eternal Society's rituals. Margot looked at Sarah, concern evident in her eyes. There is a room your grandmother always kept locked. She said it was to protect the family. Maybe that's where the key is. Let's go, Jack said, grabbing his flashlight and leading the group toward the west corridor, where the room was located. They arrived at a massive wooden door, adorned with symbols that now made sense. Thomas, using a bunch of old keys, unlocked the heavy lock with a resounding click. The door creaked open, revealing a small, austere room. In the center stood a pedestal with an ancient chest. Sarah approached, her fingers gliding over the cold metal. This is the key, she said, opening the chest and retrieving an intricately designed metallic object. My grandmother tried to protect this. Victor can't get his hands on it. We need to get it out of here, Jack said, looking at the others, and figure out Victor's next move. With the key in hand, they left the room, ready to confront the businessman and the secrets he was eager to reveal. But the truth was only beginning to emerge from the shadows of Blackwood Mansion, and the dangers were still to come. Chapter 6: Victor's Trap. The sun was just beginning to set as Jack, Sarah, Margot, and Thomas returned to the main hall of Blackwood Mansion. The key Sarah had found was safely tucked in a leather pouch slung over Jack's shoulder. The group knew that Victor was growing more desperate and, consequently, more dangerous. We need to get out of here, Jack asserted, looking at the others. Victor knows we're close to the truth. He won't stop at anything. Margot nodded. But where do we go? We can't just run to the police. They wouldn't understand. Jack pondered for a moment before replying. We need to find out what this key unlocks and how we can use it against him. And for that, we need time and safety. Before they could decide on the next step, the mansion's door burst open with a crash. Victor Harper entered, flanked by two burly men, clearly hired to intimidate. Stay where you are, Victor commanded, his voice echoing through the hall. I knew you were meddling where you shouldn't. Jack remained calm, positioning himself between Victor and the others. What do you want, Victor? Victor smiled coldly. The key, Jack, and all the information you've gathered. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you leave alive. You're playing a dangerous game, Victor, Jack said, his hand discreetly moving toward the gun in his holster. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I know exactly what I'm doing, Victor retorted. This key is the final piece to activate the ritual and unleash the power my family has craved for generations. I won't let a cheap detective and a bunch of amateurs ruin everything. Before Jack could react, one of Victor's henchmen lunged, grabbing Sarah and pressing a knife to her neck. Hand over the key or she dies, the man growled. The air grew thick with tension. Jack knew he couldn't risk Sarah's life. With slow, calculated movements, he removed the key from the pouch and held it out. Here it is. Let her go. Victor took the key with a victorious smile but did not release his grip on Sarah. Now, I'll need you all out of my way. Margot suddenly stepped forward, a look of determination on her face. Victor, you don't understand what you're doing. This power you seek is not something that can be controlled. It will destroy you and everyone around you. Victor laughed, a cold and cruel sound. You've always been a foolish old woman, Margot. Power is for those who have the courage to seek it. And I will get it. At that moment, Thomas, standing beside Margot, made a swift move, pulling a wooden cane from under his coat. With a precise strike, he hit the henchman holding Sarah, causing him to drop the knife and recoil in pain. Jack took advantage of the distraction, pulling Sarah away and drawing his gun, pointing it at Victor. It's over, Victor, Jack declared. Drop the key and get out. You won't get what you want. Victor, furious, looked around, realizing the situation had changed. You'll pay for this, he snarled before running out of the mansion, leaving his disoriented henchman behind. Jack, still holding the gun, approached Sarah. Are you okay? Sarah nodded, still trembling slightly. Yes, thank you, Jack. Thomas, now beside Margot, looked relieved. We need to hide this key somewhere Victor will never find it. Margot agreed. And we need to figure out exactly how to stop this ritual. We can't let him gain that power. Jack looked at the others, feeling the gravity of the situation. Let's go to a safe place and study these documents. There are more secrets in this mansion, and we need to uncover them before Victor returns. With the key safely back in their possession, the group left the mansion, aware that the final confrontation with Victor was approaching. They had the key, but the danger was far from over. The night still held many mysteries, and the true battle was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. Night enveloped the city like a blanket of black silk, dotted with stars that seemed to silently observe the unfolding events. Jack, Sarah, Margot, and Thomas gathered in an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, where they set up an impromptu camp to review the documents and plan their next move. The atmosphere was tense, filled with an unsettling silence broken only by the occasional sound of pages being turned or whispered exchanges between them. I found something, Margot said finally, pointing to a passage in one of the diaries. It says here that the key not only activates the ritual, but also has the power to destroy it if used correctly. Destroy it? Sarah asked, hope shining in her eyes. How do we do that? Thomas adjusted his glasses, reading the passage carefully. We need to perform a counter-ritual at the place where it all began, in the secret chamber of Blackwood Mansion. This will reverse the effects and seal the power forever. Jack nodded, looking at the others. Then we have a plan. But we know Victor won't give up easily. We need to be prepared for the worst. As they prepared to return to the mansion, a metallic sound echoed from outside. Jack went to the door and peeked out, seeing Victor and his henchmen approaching stealthily. He's found us, Jack whispered, pulling Sarah to a safe corner. We have no choice, said Margot. We need to confront him now. We can't let him catch us off guard. Jack, with his gun in hand, led the group toward the back exit of the warehouse. However, as they opened the door, they were met by one of Victor's henchmen. The man raised his weapon, but before he could shoot, Thomas lunged with his cane, disarming him with a precise strike. Go! I'll handle this one, Thomas shouted, holding the fallen henchman down. Margot, Sarah, and Jack ran through the darkness back to Blackwood Mansion. As they arrived, the full moon illuminated the Gothic facade, making the scene even more surreal. Straight to the secret chamber, Jack said, breathing heavily. We have no time to lose. Inside the mansion, each step seemed to echo through eternity. They reached the secret passage in the basement, where the shadows seemed to dance under the flickering light of Jack's lantern. Entering the chamber, they prepared for the counter-ritual. Sarah, stay by my side. Margot, help protect the entrance, Jack instructed, positioning himself at the central altar. We need complete concentration. As they began the counter-ritual, Victor and his henchmen stormed into the chamber. Stop now, he shouted, advancing with his weapon drawn. Jack continued chanting the words of the counter-ritual, ignoring Victor's threatening presence. Margot faced one of the henchmen, fighting with surprising strength for a woman of her age. Sarah, beside Jack, held the key tightly, channeling all her determination and courage. You won't succeed, Victor roared, aiming his gun at Jack. I'll end this here and now. Before he could fire, Thomas appeared, grappling with another henchman. He managed to disarm Victor, tossing the gun aside. Don't you dare touch them. Victor, furious, charged at Thomas, but Jack, still chanting the counter-ritual, raised his free hand, creating a barrier of energy that pushed Victor back. The power of the key was working, responding to the counter-ritual. Sarah now, Jack shouted. With a firm movement, Sarah inserted the key into the altar, completing the counter-ritual. A brilliant light emanated from the altar, filling the chamber with a blinding glow. Victor and his henchmen were thrown back, screaming in pain and frustration. When the light finally subsided, the chamber was silent. Victor and his henchmen lay unconscious on the ground, the power of the Eternal Society sealed forever. Jack, Sarah, Margot, and Thomas were exhausted but relieved. We did it, Jack said with a tired smile. It's over. Sarah hugged Jack, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you, Jack. I couldn't have done it without you. Margot and Thomas approached, equally exhausted but satisfied. The curse is finally broken, Margot said softly. The night was still dark, but for the first time, Blackwood Mansion felt lighter, as if an ancient burden had been lifted. Jack, Sarah, Margot, and Thomas left the chamber, ready to start anew, knowing that the dark secrets of the mansion had finally been unveiled and the future was now in their hands. Chapter 8. The Dark Revelation. The next morning brought a clear sky and a sense of renewal. Blackwood Mansion, bathed in sunlight, seemed less threatening, but Jack knew that the previous night's events would leave deep marks on all of them. Sitting in the main hall, Jack, Sarah, Margot, and Thomas were exhausted but finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. I can't believe it's over, said Sarah, still processing the events. The Eternal Society, all the secrets, finally free. Jack nodded, looking at the ancient key now inert in his hands. We've sealed the power, but there are still questions that need answers. And I think it's time we resolve everything. Margot, sitting comfortably in a leather chair, sighed. We need to inform the authorities about what happened. Victor and his henchmen must pay for their crimes. Jack agreed, but he knew that the full truth would be hard to believe. We need to be careful about what we reveal. Let's focus on Victor's crimes and leave the supernatural details to ourselves. Thomas, recovering from the previous night's confrontations, stood up slowly. I can handle that. I have contacts in the police who can help us deal with Victor without bringing up the darker secrets. Great, Jack responded. While you do that, we'll make sure the mansion is secure. We can't leave traces that might attract other power seekers. They spent the rest of the day inspecting the mansion, sealing secret passages, and removing any traces of the ancient rituals. Jack and Sarah worked side by side, their bond strengthened by the shared experience. Jack, said Sarah, as they packed the old diaries and documents, I want to turn this mansion into something positive. Maybe a museum or a community center. Something that erases the shadows of the past and brings light to the future. Jack smiled, admiring Sarah's determination. That's an excellent idea, Sarah. This mansion deserves a new beginning, just like you. By the end of the day, Thomas returned with good news. Victor and his henchmen have been arrested. The evidence against them is solid, and there will be no escaping this time. Good job, Thomas, Jack said, relieved. With that resolved, we can focus on rebuilding. In the following days, Jack helped Sarah organize the documents and plan the mansion's transformation. Margot and Thomas also contributed, offering their skills and knowledge to ensure that the Blackwood family legacy was redefined. A week later, they held a small reopening ceremony for the mansion, inviting the local community to see its new purpose. Jack watched with pride as Sarah spoke, her face radiant with hope and renewal. This mansion carries a complex history, Sarah said to the small crowd. But today we begin a new chapter, a chapter of transparency, community, and light. Applauded by the audience, Sarah stepped down from the makeshift stage and found Jack. Thank you for everything, Jack. I couldn't have done it without you. Jack smiled, hugging her. It was an honor, Sarah. And remember, I'll always be around if you need me. As time passed, Blackwood Mansion became a symbol of resilience and transformation. The mystery that once haunted its walls now served as a reminder that good can prevail over evil, and that even the darkest secrets can be faced and overcome. For Jack Sullivan, the case of Blackwood Mansion was more than a mystery solved. It was a journey of self-discovery and a reminder that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for redemption and renewal. And so, he moved on, ready to face new challenges, knowing that sometimes the greatest mysteries are the ones that help us discover who we truly are.